What's going on, relationship warriors? I am here with my partner in crime, my beautiful wife, the one who got her hair did today, Stephanie McKinley.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, man. Look, guys, I got to tell you, I've been waiting for this episode. I'm a dude. You know what dudes like to talk about. And today we're going to talk about how to amplify, how to reignite passion in your sex life, especially for all of you married couples who, let's be real, sometimes, just life gets in the way and it's busy as heck and it's hard to make time for something like that.
Yeah, why do I feel like this is like the most excited you've ever been for an episode?
Hey, you know what? Because if we have a good talk today, we might be having a good talk tonight. Hey.
I think Walt feels like he's doing all the higher sex drive people a solid on this one.
I'm just going to say you're welcome by the time we're done. And by the way, as always, like if you're listening to this on your own, one thing Stephanie and I really like to do in all seriousness is we actually like to listen to podcasts together and then talk about what we took from it. And because we have different perspectives and different energy and different thought processes, we both take different things from them. When we share those, we actually start growing even faster. And just communicating in that way brings us closer than we were before those moments, because we're actively growing together individually and as a couple. So I really challenge you couples out there to listen to these together.
Yeah, because I think we're going to make some really different points coming from each of us, because we just as men and women are really different and different level of sex drive and lots of different factors. We have different points of view on this. But I think we're going to make a lot of you see things maybe you didn't see before. So I do think this is a really important episode, because obviously sex is really important in a marriage, in a relationship. It is a real connector, and in a different way than anything else. So I do think to have a healthy relationship, it's important to have a healthy sex life.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. It's the most intimate you could be with your partner. And if you're married, you need to have a healthy sex life to have a thriving marriage. It just needs to be part of that 98 times out of 100. And so we're going to probably make some generalizations as we go along. Typically, we talk about higher sex drive people being men and lower sex drive people being women. But we know firsthand from friends that we have where the woman has a higher sex drive. And so I think it's just find out where you fit in your relationship.
Right. Whatever you relate to, listen to that.
Yeah, make it work for your relationship, like every episode we do. And so, Steph, before we started this, I went in and pulled some stats because I wanted people to know that 100% of thousands of people interviewed fell on multiple pieces of this spectrum. But I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice in our marriage, God, especially with our sex life, the way guys talk about it. And guys, we all know we inflate things, like, and I'm not talking about size right now. I'm just talking about what's on this paper. And we all know that we end up comparing. And then it's like, well, these three couples we know have sex 4 times a week, and we're only having sex, 4 times a month. And you start feeling a certain kind of way, and it causes you to look maybe outside your marriage or just take a glance that can end up being a look that can end up being infidelity. So this is a slippery slope of comparison that we want to make sure people aren't doing in their marriage as we go through these stats. And just know that everybody falls into one of these. If you want to have more sex, if you want to be more intimate, there's opportunities. We're going to talk about how to do that, like real tangible things towards the end of the episode. But I also want people to know, if you and your spouse aren't high sex drive people and having sex 1 time per month works for you, then awesome.
Right.
It doesn't have to be our way.
Exactly. These are just stats, and in no way compare yourself to this. You do what works for you as a couple. That's different for everybody. This is just so like we're not making this up. This is what's really out there.
Yeah. And what's cool is the stats I found, they were in Men's Health, and then there was a Women's Health magazine, and they both had extremely within a couple percents of each other in these stats. And so that's why I wanted to really take these. So 46% of people said they have sex 4 to 5 times per month in their marriage.
That's almost half.
Yeah, almost half, 4 to 5 times per month. I know some of the fellas are like, or high sex drive people are like,
almost 1 time a week.
I think Walt said per week. Let me make sure my low sex drive spouse listens to this. I said a month. So, 46% of people said 4 to 5 times per month. 32% of people said they have sex 2 to 3 times per week.
Yeah.
6.6% of people said they have had sex with their spouse 4 or more times per week.
Notice that number is a lot lower. 6% or 4 or more times a week.
Look, them are the people that don't have kids.
I know some people are not happy about that stat.
Hey, those are the people that don't have kids, that just they within the first 3 years of marriage. Let's be real. And if it's not you, then you know what? You've been married 10 years and you're having sex 4 times a week. You keep rocking. You keep rocking if that's you after a decade. And so 11.9% said they only have sex a couple times per year. And then 3% said they didn't have sex at all in the last year.
At least that's a low number. That's a good thing.
Right. And if that works for you in your marriage, okay. But I want to have real conversation today about metrics like that. 3%, 12% said a few times per year, 1 time per year. I just personally feel like that's really unhealthy for a marriage. And typically when we see couples that don't have sex, at times in our marriage when we weren't really having sex very often, there was a lot of resentment and a lot of ego and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. And there was a lot of distance between us in those moments. And, I've definitely found the more connected we are in our marriage, the more we hang out and spend time together and enjoy each other's company. And the more we're not pissed at each other or short with each other, or my tone sucks when I'm talking to you, the more sex we have.
I do think it's a pretty high indicator generally. I'm going to emphasize generally, because like we said, there are people who are okay with that. But in the majority of cases, when there's sex not happening, that's usually an indicator that there's problems in the relationship. And I mean, that could be all kinds of different things, but generally there's trouble there.
And by the way, I want to give all the fellas a little stat I saw in the Women's Health magazine. It said 84% of women say they have sex to get their husband to help with chores. I mean, I don't
know about that.
I don't even know. Is that persuasion or is that trying to influence?
I think it's a reverse. I think that
men will help with chores.
Men will help with chores so they can get.
Hey, what I know is if your wife asks you to do the dishes or you feel like doing the dishes because it might lead to something later in the night, 84% of the time someone's going to be right. So just go all in. Hit them
that's
dishes.
Pretty good odds. So
maybe do a load of laundry or something like that. Make sure it's a chore your spouse doesn't like to do, by the way, because if it's the one that they're like, well, I actually don't mind doing that one, then you probably won't get as many brownie points. So
I was going to say, yeah, you earn brownie points when you do these things. So
man,
it does go pretty far.
And what's crazy is we talked about, people joking about people that maybe have sex 4 times a week. And we think, man, okay, they must be newlyweds or they don't have kids yet. And I think that's when the struggle really starts. I know for us, the hardest part of our relationship and our marriage was when the kids were little. Because let's be real, man, the kids suck the life out of your relationship. Nobody wants to say it like that, but it's true. They're beautiful. They're amazing. We love our adult and teen daughters. But when they were little, like we weren't holding our hands anymore. There were times we wanted to get intimate in the room. And next thing you know, one of the damn kids are standing right next to the bed or banging on the door because we had to try to start lock it because a monster was underneath the bed or they needed water or maybe they just wanted to give a hug. And I'm like, I'm trying to give your mom a hug. Y'all need to get out. So, I mean, it's hard, right?
Yes. I mean, kids, man, they're hard. Like it's most of the time it's a struggle to get them to go to bed in the first place. And then they'll get up. They sometimes get up several times a night, just be coming in your room and you just never know. They have like the sneak attack a lot of times where you don't even hear them. And then suddenly they're like little ninjas in the night and they're like right next to your bed.
Okay. Like, Stephanie's going to probably kill me for telling the story. You know which one I'm going to tell. So when our daughter was really little, we forgot to lock the door, right? Thank God we had some covers on. And we're just, making it our 2 to 3 times per week. Or at that point, I don't know, maybe it was like 1 time per week. And all of a sudden our daughter's like, why is mommy breathing so hard? And we were like, what the hell? Like she's right next to us like a stalker. But I mean, so it's so funny now, right? But isn't that what it's like being a parent though?
Oh,
And you're just exhausted. You stayed at
I
home
feel
with the
like
kids
you
all
have to
day.
get really creative when you have young children. You really do. I mean, we talk about this, and I know it sounds so not passionate to have to schedule it, but I do think it's better to schedule it so at least it happens.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about that because that's one of the 4 pro
Mhm.
tips that we got here at the end, and what scheduling it can do to spice up
Mhm.
your relationship, even though it doesn't sound sexy on the surface.
Right.
And but it's like we got work, and we have kids, and
Chores
we have chores,
and
and we have
errands.
bedtime routines, and we have outside stress, and we have family stuff, and there's so many things, finances,
Mhm.
stressing about money too. There's so many things that will pick and atrophy away at how you personally feel throughout the day.
Well, we were talking about how, like, when you first get together, it's you don't even have to think about this. It just happens because you're just so in love, and you have freedom because you don't have anything that's coming in between you, and you know and then you move to where when you move in, even that things
Hmm.
change because now you start dealing with life together and what actually comes with that.
Well,
And
now there's not separation in the day to day.
right, like you said,
Like,
there's work
I
and
used to
there's
drive out
paying
to see
bills
you,
and
and
there's
yeah, like I used to drive
chores.
out to see you, and we'd be so excited to see each other. We hadn't
Right.
seen each
And you
other in a
work
couple
together all
days,
the time.
right?
Yes.
Then you live together, and it's like, if Walt leaves his socks over there on the damn floor one more time, what?
Right. And you're seeing each other every day, day in and day out, and you have to do and you see all of their patterns and the good and the bad, and everything is, all together. So it does start to take away a little bit from that intimacy, and then you have children, and whew, that really throws the relationship
Mm-hmm.
for a loop, and that's a whole different set of things you have to take care of that you never had
Mm-hmm.
before, and that's where we see most couples really start to struggle. And it happened for us too. Same things happened. It was amazing when we were first together, and it
Mm-hmm.
was still really good when it was just us and we moved in together. But it definitely, we started to have
Mm-hmm.
a little arguments, petty arguments about dumb
Mm-hmm.
things. And I remember Walt being like, "Stop nagging me! Like,
Yeah. But
you're not my mom."
Jesus, you know, like about doing dishes, and by the way, I'm a really clean person, but Stephanie is like OCD, and she's calmed down since we had kids a little bit, but she's everything, even before we leave the house. She hits some
I'm
pillows on the
still like
couches
that.
and stuff
Yeah.
because it's got it. She doesn't feel good about leaving if things aren't in their place. So her and I come from,
But it's almost like, what is that? Norming and storming, or storming and
yeah,
how does it
yeah,
go?
mhm,
It's kind of
yeah,
like that. Like when you first move in together,
norming,
you have
storming,
to go through
performing,
that whole
the storming period.
phase where you really start to learn each other's patterns and every habits, and you got to kind of work through all that, and that takes some time, and so that affects the relationship. And then, like we said, and then enter kids, and then it's a whole
Right.
nother
Then you're
ballgame.
just trying to get a quickie in on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah,
Take 5 minutes because that's all you got.
the quickie
You know,
becomes a necessity.
but the thing is, like, especially for you because you stayed at home when the kids were really little, like they're hanging on you all day too.
Yes.
And I get to leave and I get to go to work, and yeah, I'm providing for the family, and I'm busting my butt and I'm doing my thing, but it still isn't the same as having a child hanging on you all day. Now when I come
Mhm.
home, the kids want dad time and fun time, and I did that. But then, I'm tired, and maybe I had a stressful day at work, and you know, maybe,
Yeah, let's be honest, we're all a lot more tired.
yeah. I mean, right, you're exhausted, and you've had kids on you all day, and if you're a stay-at-home parent, man, I Stephanie definitely feels for you because she did it. I have
Mhm.
way more empathy now that I've got a little bit more perspective and wisdom with my age, that you just don't get a break. It's nonstop. So then
Mhm.
when, in this case, your husband is like, "Oh, what up, girl? What's happening tonight? We can do this thing," and you're just like, "Dude, for real? Like, I just want to go to bed, bro. Like, you're lucky I held your hand or tickled your hair tonight." You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't trying to do nothing else. And but that starts to become the norm unless you're intentional
Mhm.
about it, unless you push yourself outside of that comfort zone in those moments. And then for women, after kids, like, there's a whole hormonal change, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say this is kind of where we heard this through a marriage workshop we went to. A couple named Trey and Lee. We learned about this people having, generally one partner has a higher sex drive than the other. And this is where it starts to become really noticeable because, and I will say this is something that when we went through our struggles, I realized that even though I didn't want, like, I didn't have the same physical need my husband did. So I felt like I had to like tell myself, okay, but I read somewhere, I can't remember where, but it actually talked about the physiological need for men and that they really do have a need. And I think it was, don't quote me on this, but I think it said like every 3 days they are supposed to release. And I don't know, I guess that just hit me like, wow, I guess he really does. There is a real need there that I don't experience, so I didn't understand it. But it made me more like
empathetic, probably. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't know if that's the word I want to use, but yeah, empathetic to what his needs were. So even though I wasn't feeling the need for that, I realized he did.
Maybe like conscious, right? Like then it was conscious.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't a blind spot. It was like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that.
And so, and I think it's hard for him to understand that for me personally, and I think this is a lot of women, not all, but a lot of women, for us, it's more emotional. And so I just have to say this. So for all the guys out there, really pay attention to this because this will affect your sex life. If a woman feels loved and appreciated and, you give her compliments and you treat her well and you tell her she's doing a good job and those kinds. And I'm not saying you have to do that all the time, but if she generally feels that energy from you, she'll be a lot more inclined to want to have sex with you. Where if you're being kind of harsh towards her or you demean her or you say rude things or you have a rude tone, that tends to stay with her and she's left with that feeling from you. And then that makes her not want to be intimate.
I think also too, that guys are visual creatures, right? And we've had friends that do this. Like a good looking chick will walk by and they're with their spouse and they're like, dang, she's got a nice ass.
Or they're just staring
appalled
at her
and shocked
in front of her.
At least put some sunglasses on so you can look out the side eye of your peripheral or something, but literally just outwardly say something. Or we've had friends in the past, especially in the military, like porn's huge. People really look at that when they're going to play, but people genuinely get addicted to that. And neurologically, it literally will rewire your brain. And it gives you unrealistic expectations of what you think sex is. And honestly, if your wife was doing the stuff that you watched on porn, you wouldn't be, the attraction wouldn't be there and like you think that it would. And so it's just being real with yourself.
They say looking at that affects
like it rewires your brain, literally rewires your brain. And so it's like in those moments, guys, especially when you're looking at other women in front of your spouse, when you're watching porn, like just to get ready to go in the bedroom and have sex with your spouse, or some of the people, they were hiding it on like USB cards. And I know some of you guys listening to this are doing it. Stop. Because nothing will make your wife feel less than that type of stuff. And if you really want to be connected to your spouse and you really want to have a healthy sex life, there is no place in your marriage for that. When you go out with the fellas, and that's different.
I have to say, that's another thing. Women feel we're so judged on our looks all the time, all day, every day, judged on our looks. And that's why the beauty industry is like making ridiculous money.
Billions.
Because this is what women feel like. That's how it's almost like that's what gives us our value and our worth half the time, because that's what is always talked about. And, it does matter in sex and everything. So, and it's like he said, if we feel like you're looking or lusting after someone else, or you're talking about it in front of us, that makes us feel very not special. And
makes you feel like you're not good enough.
Yeah. And we don't measure up. And so that is going to really hurt.
I mean, imagine, because women don't do this 99% of the time. Imagine if your wife was talking about other men all the time in front of you, about how hot they were, how sculpted their chest, like they got abs, like they got money, the car, they got, Imagine if the role was reversed, and we have to get out of that patriarchy like system that everybody's grown up in, where that's like how men think, and it's more acceptable than a woman doing it. It's not acceptable for anybody to do it at any point, but especially when you're married. And it's not like guys aren't going to look at women. Let's be real. Like, guys are visual creatures. But man, when you're like staring and you're lusting, and then you're doing that stuff and you're disrespecting, because to me, this is what this is.
Well, and that's another thing I don't think men realize sometimes. Like, they'll talk about women, like not really even thinking about women sitting there or overhearing.
Oh, like a crude joke. Yeah.
Yeah. And we are paying attention, and we are realizing the things that you're saying. And so now we're always thinking about that stuff too. Like, whatever it is you mentioned, like, well, I know he's paying attention to that now. And now I'm comparing myself to that, and yeah, and feeling not good enough. And that stuff definitely affects the bedroom activity.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. And I have to say, especially like when women first have their children, like after pregnancy, we go through a lot of change. You know, our body's been really affected, our hormones are really affected. There's a lot of stuff happening that really affects us in that way. And you know, for men, that drive doesn't go away. That's always there, but it does change for the woman. And so that's why there tends to end up being so much turmoil in that time of in a couple's.
And typically a man wants to release, like, he releases a lot of stress. Like, sex is a way for a man to release stress, and maybe for some women, but men for sure, right? And you know, it's funny because I was thinking, so many people want to compare.
It can be for both, but I definitely think it's high for men.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a stress relief for both. It's just a matter of if the woman's too tired, or she's like, you know what, I need the stress relief right now, but she don't need the stress relief every third day like a man does. And you know, it's funny because so many people compare a man being a pressure cooker to a woman being a crock pot, and a woman's got a simmer. But I'm a dude, so I like to, you know, and I like steak, so I equate it to steak. Men, you know, you get the grill hot, right? Men, all you need to do is sear the outside. It's like getting a raw steak. You just stick it on the fire a little bit, right? Your wife just touches your shoulder like, hey, did you have a good day? You're like, oh, we gonna do it?
They're just ready.
Right? It's like just throwing the steak on the grill, flipping it over on each side, and they're ready to go. Like, let's go. We're gonna eat it. It's gonna happen. Women, man, it's like cooking on a charcoal grill instead of one of them 1,000-degree sear grills that men are on all the time. It's women, it's like charcoal. You have to take time. You have to let the charcoal get hot. You have to let the briquettes turn gray. And people are like, wow, you thinking about this too much. And then you put the steak on, right? And you can't put the steak right over the heat. You got to put the steak right off the heat, right? And you got to let it warm up, and you got to take care of it. And you have to season it. But that is really the difference between men and women. Men are like that infrared sear part on a grill where it's like, they're ready. And women are like, you said like 4 words to me since you've been home from work, but I ain't ready yet.
Yes. And I will say, this is something I don't even think we wrote down, but touch is actually really important to women too. That physical touch is just not in the way that you men think.
Not slapping her in the butt. Although I think secretly women like that too.
I'm not saying that's one, right? That could be a touch, but that's not it. It's like, we really do. I know for me, I love hugs and I need them. And that does make me feel closer. And, you know, they even say that's physiologically been proven that, you know, your, what is it called? Oxytocin or whatever raises and all that when you hug. And
but for men, it does too, though, right? Just women even more so, I think.
So, and we heard from that workshop also that it's like a 7-second hug or something like that is really how long you have to hug to release those endorphins. And
kissing.
Yes.
Right. It doesn't have to be all overly passionate every single time. But
kissing, holding hands.
But you know, you said this before to me, Steph. You're like,
you know, rubbing your back.
But without the expectation of sex after. Because men will be like, oh, I'm gonna give you a hug and rub your back.
That's a very important
You need a back massage.
Is that women feel like they can sense when I think we feel like a lot of times we can tell you only start to do those, like men will only start to do those things when they want to have sex. And so we feel kind of like, oh yeah, you're just doing that for sex. And so it becomes like, you feel like it's a transaction, not like you care and love of me and you're trying to, you know what I mean? It's just a different feel. So we really want to feel like you can be able to hug us and give us a kiss and do these little things without it having to be sex.
I mean, it doesn't mean you can't hope that you can have sex afterwards, but you shouldn't be expecting it.
Honestly, if you're doing those things, it probably will. But I mean,
well, it's like little stuff. Even I've been doing the last couple of years. Like, let's say we're in bed and we cuddle. Well, I mean, I was down for the get down after like 5 seconds of cuddling, thinking that was going to happen. Well, then sometimes
I know, but see, this is the thing. I love to cuddle, but then I can tell like, oh, but if I cuddle with him, he's expecting to have sex. And I didn't necessarily want to have, I wasn't in the mood at that moment or whatever. I just was like, can we just cuddle? I like to be close to you. Like,
well, and the thing is, like, you communicated, right? That's the first big pro tip we want to talk about. You communicated your wants and needs. You literally said, hey, I want to be able to cuddle without feeling like you want sex right afterwards. Doesn't mean that doesn't happen sometimes, but it means like, so you know what? Sometimes because you communicated that with me, because it isn't just about what I want and need, it's also about what you want and need in this partnership. I intentionally will cuddle with you sometimes.
And I'm trying to remember what was the number they said. A woman actually needs, like, it was several. I don't know how many the exact number was. It was like 15.
It was like a lot.
Touches a day.
Yeah.
To get her, like, this is that
more than 12
analogy. Like that time that we need that buildup for us to be ready. That starts from like the morning through the day. Like we do need a lot of physical touch to get us to the point where we're feeling like, oh, like that's warming us up.
Well, and so think about this, because the first episode we talked about where we transitioned from legacy warrior and a lot of self-improvement, where we started really talking about marriages, we talked about 5 tips for communication. Every episode probably will have some aspect of communication. And building a really great sex life in your marriage is huge. Like that's step number 1, is to communicate your wants and needs with your spouse. Steph can't expect me to like miracle what she wants or have ESP, and I know exactly what that looks like. And she can't expect the same thing for me. So it's really about,
right. Like some of the things I had communicated was like, I really liked when he gave me a kiss first thing, like before he left the house in the morning. I liked like a goodbye kiss. Even if I wasn't awake and I'm just still in bed, I just liked when he kissed me to say, I love you and goodbye. I like hugs. Like I like a hug for a greeting and like at the end of the night, and same thing. I like a kiss at the end of the night and little things. And like, I told him I like to cuddle and I like to hold hands. And so all those are little touches. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, that it does make a big difference.
So even though her love language is quality time, there's also a huge aspect of physical touch. Like those of you guys watching on YouTube get to see, we sit pretty close to each other. Well, I always have my hand on her leg. It's just like, even when we're in the car, I do that because my love language is also physical touch. And the more physical touch that's there, and not always sexual physical touch, the more connected I feel also.
I even like things like, I like when he tickles my feet or, gives me a back massage or all that kind of stuff matters. Just even like if your woman is cooking in the kitchen, come behind her and give her a hug, like from behind, or like just little things like that. It really does, like, because that just makes a woman feel loved. And that's what emotionally what she needs to want to be physical.
And I think that has to do with how many days a week or a month or whatever that rhythm is for you, do you need? So because high sex drive, low sex drive, it looks different.
And this is what's hard when we're not the same sex drive. It's hard for us to understand what our partner needs because we're not the same as them. Like how he's just more ready. So he doesn't think about having to do these things to get me ready because he's just ready.
Right. Like for me,
I don't realize that, like, how much he needs that because I don't. So I'm like, you have to kind of, you have to have this communication with your partner because everybody's different and you need to find out what works for them specifically and start to do those things. It's really important.
Well, I want to make sure we're clear. Also, it's not about just what they need. It's about what you need as a united couple. And you're going to hear us talk about this a lot. So for me, I mean, I don't at this age anymore. I don't think I can have sex every single day, but Steph, you say that you could probably have sex every single day. And I was like, hey, like 2 or 3 times a week for me, like I'm cool with that. Like at least 2, maybe 3. And for her, you were, can't even remember now. It wasn't 2 or 3 times a week.
We had to compromise because I didn't need it as much, but I was willing to compromise it 2 to 3 times a week because
Correct.
I didn't want it every day. And I knew you weren't going to do it only like once or twice a week. So we had to meet in the middle.
Right. So look, it wasn't what she wanted. It wasn't her way. It wasn't my way. Now it's our way. And by the way, that doesn't mean when life gets busy and it's not 2 or 3 times a week, now I'm all pissed off because of my expectations are that it always is that. I just know the majority of the time it just happens that way because you and I communicated. We had a conversation.
But honestly, I do keep it in the back of my mind because I know it's not as prevalent to me. So I do pay attention to, okay, I know if he's starting to feel like it's been too long, like, so I will definitely make sure I adjust for that.
Walt's feeling kind of edgy. Damn it. All right. It's like tonight's tonight. And so once you
he will start communicating to me in his little ways.
Promise you that. Like, what's up for tonight? And then after communication, like, flirt with your spouse, man. Like Steph talked about the physical touch, so we won't go over that again, but the constant physical touch. But I think women allow men to pursue them because societally that's kind of how things work out. But men want to be pursued too, ladies. Like men want to be flirted with. Men want to feel like they're attractive too. So when both parties flirt with each other, it could be text, it could be a look, it could be a kiss, it could be a pat on the butt. Like there's so many ways that you can do that. Find out what your partner's version of flirting looks like and then flirt with them. Why not? Like, wow, how fun is that? You didn't have a problem flirting when you first got together. Like light that fire, light that flame again and start flirting with them and really have fun in your relationship. Like Steph and I, we have a freaking blast together.
We do. I have to, this is one of the traits about my husband that I love is he has a really good sense of humor and I laugh a lot. So it works for us.
Thank God she laughs at my jokes even 24 years later, 26 years. But I want to make this clear. Like both parties also need to initiate sex. Nothing's worse than being the person that's always initiating. Then you almost feel like I've heard guys tell me, I feel like now I'm begging for it. So now screw it. I don't want it at all. Now all of a sudden they're looking at other women. Now all of a sudden they're like, they might go outside their marriage, right? It's like a real slippery slope. So you both got to be able to flirt, pursue, and initiate with each other. And if you're really doing that and both parties are being intentional because you've communicated it, man, like you turn your volume in your marriage from a 2 to a 10 almost immediately.
So we mentioned this earlier about the scheduling.
Steph was jumping the gun earlier. What's up?
And I know that doesn't sound sexy, but honestly, if you do though, then both parties are thinking about that ahead of time and that makes you more ready. So it actually, you build the anticipation and you'll be more excited for it, knowing that it's, especially with a man, like knowing that's going to come then, like he doesn't have to feel like, oh, is it going to happen? Like, oh, she's going to let me down again or
well, it's like that.
And for the woman, she has time to think about that and it will make her more ready.
Yeah. It's like just that thought process, like, okay. And then it's like the charcoal briquettes, like I talked about for the woman, right? Like it just allows that fire to get stoked and really get burning. Now, especially if you add in like physical touch and flirtation and those things on those days, especially on those days, but especially on those days when you schedule it, man, like you could build this anticipation where you guys are like some damn wild animals by the time it's time for bed. And by the way, I want to make sure this is clear too, because I've talked to other guys that have tried scheduling it with their spouse, and sometimes their spouse withholds it because they're just mad at them, and that's not okay. Or sometimes their kid came into the room and they peed the bed or they threw up or what, like, and it messed up the scheduling of that night. Don't over expect that. I think it's just like in the majority, hopefully you execute on your game plan, right? And you meet the schedule.
That's what I was going to say. You really got to make sure you do make your best effort to execute. If you can't because of something crazy like that, and it does happen, then you got to be reasonable and just say, okay, like
Rain check.
Yeah.
So what's up for
It's the
tomorrow
next
night?
night. Yeah.
But if you got an attitude because you're not being empathetic to things that your spouse went through that day or the stress that they had to deal with, where they're just like, I'm just not tonight. I'm just not feeling it. Because if you're not feeling it, you got to communicate that. And then you cop an attitude because it didn't meet the schedule. Don't think you're going to get a rain check, right? You're just going to start to build resentment.
Yeah.
So communicate, but schedule it. Build that anticipation. Make sure you're flirting on that day and have fun with each other. And, the hugs and the kisses and the pat on the butt and all the rubbing
Even
the shoulders.
text messages to each other, or there's other ways, like if you call each other during the day, or just something to let them know you're thinking about them. Or there's lots of little ways that you can build this in to your everyday in small ways. That's not going to feel like, oh, this is a chore. You don't want it to feel like it's a chore that you have to do.
Correct. You want to be ready for it. And I think when you're doing these things, this next piece is huge, right? This last piece. And guys, I really want to talk to you about this one because it's so easy for us. Sometimes we make it about ourselves and we just need to have an orgasm. And I think you really got to understand that women take a little bit longer. We've already given my favorite steak analogy. You guys know and love it already. Or the crock pot and pressure cooker. Women want to orgasm too. So make sure that you're putting in the work to help them get there also. And by the way, if you've been married and you're having sex and like people orgasm together, like, man, it's this great intimate feeling. And you're like, woo, and both people finish. And by the way, ladies, for the guys too, tell them what you like. Tell them what's working. Tell them what's not working. Because as a man, I can tell you, like, you want your lady to fit. So when they don't, you're like, damn, man, I missed the mark. Damn it. Sometimes ladies just don't mean it don't feel good. It doesn't mean they don't really enjoy it.
It's true. I think both parties miss out if you don't communicate these things, because if they're not doing whatever it is you need, you're not getting fulfilled, and they aren't either, because then they feel let down that you didn't too. So you really miss out by not sharing that with each other. And so that's why you really just need to make sure you're being open in your communication, open and honest. And I know it can be awkward and feel weird sometimes to talk about that stuff, but it is really important. Or if they did do something that you really liked, really key in on really let them know
that was a hot spot. Do that again.
Yeah, then at least then they know, oh, I did that right. Like, she likes that, or he likes that.
And by the way, another article stat in that women's health magazine was that married women have twice as many orgasms as single women. And the cool thing about being married is if you're willing to communicate, if you're willing to have what is uncomfortable, which is weird because you are having sex. So why is it uncomfortable to talk about the sex that you are having, what you like? If you're really paying attention and being intuitive while you're having sex, if you're having a conversation about what you like and what you don't like, sex is extraordinary. Because, by the way, your partner knows exactly what you like. They know exactly what hot buttons to hit, where to go with it, like how much workup time you need, how long did the briquettes gotta simmer, like your spouse knows that. And so the sex can be super hot. So don't let the stress, don't let the strain, don't let the kids, don't let the finances, don't let work, don't let all these things that will take away from this super healthy sex life and very passionate sex life that you can have. Don't let those atrophy that. Go back to what made you guys you in the beginning and start to put work in there. And man, I'm going to tell you, if you're doing some of these things, you will find what works best in your relationship. So go all in, man. Go all in.
By the way, I just have to bring this up because our previous 2 podcast episodes were on communication and trust. And those are very vital and fit into this being really good. So if some of those things are struggling, if you're not communicating, if you're not trusting your partner, those things will affect your sex life. So you have to get those things in order, because they're really foundational for everything.
And once you do, it's like makeup sex when you get in an argument. You ever notice how makeup sex is hot? Like people just like, man, because you've been frustrated with each other. There's been resentment. There's been some hurt. There's been whatever it is. Then you have this sometimes argument, sometimes it's just a very radical conversation, which we implore everybody to have in their relationships. Like, talk about the things that were resentment or building, and you talk about those, and then you come together again and you work through it. Then there's like this really powerful connection that happens. And then typically the sex that happens after you make up is so strong because you feel so connected again, where you had just felt disconnected.
That's what I was going to say. Because then it's a different level of connection.
Right.
When you feel heard and understood and all of that, it just that adds to the overall amazing feeling you have.
Well, Steph, you know me, I can just, we can talk about sex all night. Shoot. Well, till bedtime.
Like I said, I think this is Walt's favorite episode.
Till bedtime, then we got to go. No, you have any final thoughts on this topic for all those relationship warriors out there?
No, I think we covered it all for me. I mean, like I said, just really whichever higher or lower sex drive person you are, you really have to start thinking about how your partner feels versus how you feel, because it's not the same, and you're going to have to make adjustments to meet in the middle somewhere, and compromise on some of these things is really important. And I can't stress enough that for women, don't forget, for women, it's emotional. And so all those little things that you're saying and looking at, and I can't tell you how much that affects the woman. And so you have to be really conscious of those things. Be careful what you say in front of her. Be careful how you say things to her, because that stuff does affect the bedroom. So, yeah, that's all I got.
Man, look, everybody wants a stronger sex life. I don't know nobody that don't want a stronger sex life. Get back to the things that really made you connected at the beginning. Remember that person, and through all the resentment, through all the pain, remember that person that you fell in love with, that you still love today, that you're still in love with today. That's just masked by all these things and the years and the hurts that we all put on each other as human beings. Communicate your wants and needs. Flirt with your dang spouse. Have some damn fun again. We keep talking about this a lot. Like, have some damn fun. Life is too short to be serious all the damn time. If your life's so busy that you can't just fit in some sex.
That's what I was going to say. Be intentional.
Schedule some sex. That's some intentionality right there. Let that simmer, boy, and then do the things like the flirt.
And we're telling you, scheduling works.
And then once it's time for the schedule to happen, make sure you don't make it just about yourself. Make sure that you make it about your spouse's wants and needs in those moments too. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to start to make it about your wants and needs at the same time. And then it's going to be some sizzling hot sex that everybody wants. So look, guys, as always, thank you for joining us. Go to our Instagram or join our Facebook group at Legacy Driven Marriages. We're building this community for all of us, right? Those people who are willing to be relationship warriors, fight and go all in on each other and their families. And we want you to join the movement with us. Also, we love to hear from you guys. So like, once you do join the movement, DM us or, write some comments on the episodes or descriptions. We like to know like what you liked about the episodes, but also we like to know what you want us to talk about. And we've done quite a few episodes now where people have reached out and asked us for specific things, and we always work those into the schedule. Also, it's crazy because we listen to podcasts, but we don't always hit that subscribe button. So make sure you're hitting the subscribe button, and share this podcast out with other people who need it. We can't grow the movement without you guys. So look, until the next week, get into the relationship arena.
Keep loving and keep fighting for each other and your family.
We'll see y'all next Tuesday.